Hello and welcome to another jungle video, and in this one we're going to look at the playstyle of World's Final MVP FPX Tian. His raw pressure and pathing coupled with his decision making gives him this presence and illusion that he is everywhere on the map and at any moment could be there for a gank, skirmish, or even just sneaking a dragon. Because he was in the EU West server for Worlds over the past month, we had the unique possibility of observing his solo queue game so that we could actually learn from his tendencies and pressure and apply it to our own games, and that's the goal for this video. With his playstyle, he is commonly 3 levels up on the enemy jungler, and honestly having that in our minds is a great thing that we can all benefit from considering the camp changes that are coming in Season 10. So without further delay, ensure you click the like button if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing for all that Season 10 goodness coming up starting next week. And now some godly jungling will join you after this brief message from Rast.
The end of season has arrived, and you have still not reached your goal. How sad. But that's okay, op.gg is here with their Chrome extension to automatically enable that multi-search you need to scout your teammates' inadequacies. It will give you their win rate, their most used champions, their main roles, their win percentage, their mastery levels, everything you need to know which lane to camp. It will also open a stat page for the champion you chose, and along with the automatic rune setting and automatic item recommendation, the op.gg extension is here to help you win, climb, and conquer. Please click the link in the description below. That was a pretty good take, right?
Now we do have a main game that we can learn from that encompasses all his tendencies, but also some other examples that I'll show at the end of the video so that you can see he pulls us off with a variety of champions. But because he chose Lee Sin for his World Championship skin, we shall use that as our primary example. Now his early route isn't anything special, just your typical red side clear. However, it's worth noting what a jungler does after those first 3 camps, what a jungler does when he gets level 3 is basically representative of what kind of jungler he actually is. Some will look for that level 6 rush, clear the bottom side, be very passive. Aggressive junglers who have a unique ability to read and predict what the enemy's going to do are usually some of the best in the world. In this case, he likes to generally go and invade and time his approach such that he can match up with the enemy jungler at their second buff. This is especially true if he has any vision cues like he did in this situation. Now obviously your chosen champion needs to be able to conduct these things and handle themselves, especially if you don't have lane priority, and you also need to be able to read lane states very quickly. And this is something he does quite often, whether it's an early gank level 3 or invading onto the enemy jungler to basically take them out of the game. He trusts his mechanical outplay potential and his jungle choices in order to gain that lead. And if the enemy jungler in a situation like this goes to gank, the Gragas actually left his blue to go to the top lane, you can kill him as he falls back, get that 1v1 kill, and then when the top laner rotates, take him out as well. This kind of stuff will not change in Season 10. Remember, you will be able to get level 3 on either side of the map, blue or red, but the takeaway is after making such a play, most people end up just walking away. Low elo people sometimes will have a really good early game play, but then they don't push that advantage in any way. If you want to be 3 levels up, look to take camps on your way out, and there's a very specific reason of why I'm telling you this, and we'll get to it shortly. But after doing the crab, he goes back to base, he gets a nice purchase, and then he can move on down to the river and try and get that second crab. Now you will notice the Rakan goes roaming with him. Now that is actually his teammate on FPX, Crisp, who was just as responsible for their World Championship win as Tian was, and he couldn't have done what he did from the jungle without the support of his support. Now he takes a nice wide angle pathing around the bush so that Gragas, while he was conducting a gank, will not anticipate the Lee Sin being there right at that moment, and because of this and because of the level and experience advantage, with the rise his support can easily secure another kill. Now the important part to note about these 2-minute 30 camp timers from Season 9 is that because Gragas knows Lee Sin most likely took his gromp and he got the blue, so there's no point going back to the top side, he's forced into the bottom side. The thing about that is that the camps have not yet respawned, so Gragas is forced into taking desperate ganks. This means as a jungler, if you have the right mindset and you know what you're going to do to the enemy jungler, you should be there for a counter gank as the Lee Sin was. Following that now, the spawn timer of the Raptors and Krugs, the second tier spawn, should both be up at this stage. If you're a support player as well as a jungle player, this is why it's good to duo as a support and jungler together, because your experience advantages do not matter as much as a support if your goal is to make the enemy jungler look like Jankos, in the early game in the finals, non-existent. Now to increase this even further, what he does is instead of taking those Krugs, his support will go and put that deep vision down on the Krugs, deep by the red buff, and then he can go and solo that Drake very easily. The power of early game junglers, right? And Gragas is so hungry for any sort of catch-up experience to get any camps, he just thanks the old gods and the new for those Krugs that have been left alone such that he can eat something. Not that he really needs it as Gragas, but then Lee Sin can fall back, take his blue side camps, remove them from the counter jungling possibilities. The enemy jungler again will feel the need to do something. His second red buff is coming up. He wants to have control over that. He will look to gank on the bottom side, but in the meantime you can look with your level lead at this moment to punish any laners trying to push the lane before they go back, get level 6 and so on, and he takes out the Orianna all by himself. Now because the Gragas was in the bottom lane trying to get a gank off, in fact he did get a gank off, Lee Sin can take the red buff and then collapse on him. Now, if your mid laner doesn't rotate down, this is a stupid move. Your ADC is dead, your support's lower levels, he's not in a position to help you, you need to be careful. It is a wasted flash by Tian, but the Rise does come down, they group together and they pick off at least one. A quick use of the flash that kept him from death's grasp, and now he can go back to base and spend his disturbing amount of gold. And now the reason for invading and taking the buff and taking a camp on your way out that he did at level 3 is that you either force the jungler to be in a position where you can counter gank and take advantage of it, or you force him to gank in a certain situation which might look bad from the laner's perspective, but from a jungler's perspective, you're taking an objective somewhere else and getting even more of a lead for yourself and your team. He does this quite often in his games, and in Season 10, this will not work as well because those camps will come up sooner. Junglers won't feel the need to force gank when they've been invaded and lost camps, because the spawn time is going down by 30 seconds means instead of rushing that gank level 3 on the mid lane that the Gragas did, where Lee Sin got a second kill, he can instead do his Raptors and Krugs for the second time and be caught up in experience enough that he can actually have an impact on the game. Now here his goal is simply to take his Raptors to get level 7, because that level 7, if the Gragas has taken any camps or gets level 6, means he still will have a level up. The enemy top laner has ideas of his own, I guess trying to collapse on the red buff, perhaps flying down to the mid lane to use his ultimate, and he runs into the Lee Sin, who says thank you very much for the free kill. The Gragas had managed to secure his blue buff, uses the Predator, but then has to back out again because he's still 2 levels down. That means he's going to give up his rubber-banded Gromp camp, which in Season 10, remember, will be increased. Krugs will be less, Gromp will be more. This means you don't want to be giving up too many edge camps whatsoever on either side of the map. Again, forcing the Gragas out of his topside jungle, not letting him rest easy, not letting him get vision down, and not even letting him get into the river at all. And yes, you say, well, he's Lee Sin, he's a pro player, that's very easy. Yeah, but you could do it too if your jungler wins the matchup and you have a 2-level lead. Even if you don't really win the matchup, if you're 2 levels up, you should still be able to exert your will on the enemy jungler. He didn't fall into this pattern of going to the red buff and the Krugs. He just said, well, I'm gonna take Raptors and invade on the blue. Oh, look, there's an Ornn. I'll take him out, and I get to take Gromp again. Now they dance across the mid lane. You see the Rise is keeping up his good vision control over the enemy Raptor camp. Mid laners, please take note of this. And there is a little bit of a disconnect where the Rakan goes in, he is level 4, enemy Leona is level 6, because when you roam so much and get vision, it's great for your jungler, it isn't so great for you in the ADC. So as a jungler, you do need to keep in mind, and yes, if you're a world champion winning support, it's not so much an issue, but in solo queue, if you're support doing this, please keep an eye on your experience levels. Know that you will need to have the jungle support when you go in these invades. Tian was simply getting some vision down doesn't mean necessarily to go in. He actually didn't really want to take those camps because guess what? You go back to base, you move on to your red buff, you get to take that, you're level 8. The Gragas knows, hey, the support's dead, the Lee Sin had to leave. I get a free gank in the bottom lane. How cool is this? We get to shove tower plates. However, the Lee Sin understood that once Rakan died, Gragas had control of his jungle again, would quickly eat those camps up, so he can go and take that Rift Herald. You will also notice his top laner did actually die in the meantime as well, so it's not like all his lanes are ruffle stomping. His bottom lane is in a bit of a weird spot because of Rakan's perma roaming. His top laner just died, and it's really only his mid laner that is definitively ahead. And once you have the Herald, you need to make a play on the map, read on the map what is the situation. The 3 in the bottom lane are still there, still trying to shove those towers, get first tower gold, get experience for Gragas, snowball that ADC lead that they have. So Lee Sin says, well, let me go top lane, fake a tower dive, and as any Ornn main knows, when you try and interrupt the Herald with your ultimate from a long distance, it's most likely not going to make it. You know, in Season 10 it would, because the channel time instead of being 4 seconds is actually going to be 1 second, so as Ornn pleased next week when it comes, don't start ulting Heralds, you're definitely not going to make it. The Rift Herald lays some smackdown on the tower plates, true damage, free gold, Orianna rotates, Lee Sin picks up 2 kills. He gets a smack away at the tower the whole time, shoves the wave all the way to the next tower and goes back to base. He's level 10, Gragas is level 7. The consistent camp denial, the inability for the enemy jungler to counter jungle whatsoever, forcing Gragas to be on certain sides of the map because of the camps you're stealing, having your support and mid laner help ward. Yes, you're gonna say my mid laner and support don't ward. It's time to stop complaining, guys. Take matters into your own hands, put the wards yourself, read the enemy jungler yourself, stop blaming teammates, because I guarantee you Tian doesn't have this in every game he plays. He just has this natural intuition about how to play the game and read where the enemy jungler is going to be. We all don't have that, but we can educate ourselves and increase the speed at which we process in-game information, and over time this does improve. Knowing the limits of your champion is also important because with Lee Sin, you have a certain power level that others don't, certain mobility that others don't, You have to ode back to bot lane. There's nothing left on the top side of the map. No tower, no herald. Your top laner can also go and counter jungle and steal Gragas' camps. This forces the Gragas to the bottom side, and while you are looking for a normal gank with a normal amount of pressure, given they couldn't actually end up taking that bottom side tower, if things don't go so well, make sure to use your mechanical ability and huge lead to pick up a nice triple kill. Yes, when you die, you give that shot on gold, so do be careful, don't always throw that away. And now the next phase is when most low elo junglers, mid MMR junglers will fail to translate these early game leads into victories. You've controlled the enemy jungle, you've controlled the temple of the game, you've closed the map down and focused it into the middle and bottom lane because top is of course taken. What you need to know is that paying attention to your level spikes is very important. It can be very important to get level 11 before those mid-game skirmishes because of the upgrade to your ultimate in terms of cooldown and damage. Also, a lot of players will end up having the enemy team group because you forced them to group because you closed the map down, and then you actually are off farming trying to clear up your camps that you've been leaving for so long. What Tian does and most junglers should be doing is that you take those camps when your laners or team are not coordinated. Maybe your ADC died and he's back in base and you want to wait for him before you group up and take a fight. You take those camps, and when he does show up, then you can move together as a unit, push on down the lanes and win those fights. Low elo junglers will get too caught up in camp sequencing in the mid game, which is not really what you want to be doing. You want to pick those camps up during downtime so that you can get those levels back, but not at the expense of losing fights. On that note, you should be watching Lee Sin have a really nice fight and his team again picking up a huge win. This is because he very often is the go button for his team. When your champion has mobility, good damage output, good item leads, the fact that you can assassinate someone and you can move around fights in a very strong way, that's what you should be looking to do. You're not waiting for your teammates to engage, you do it. Very often if you have this kind of lead, you can assassinate anyone, and if you can do that to a priority target, then that should win you the rest of the skirmishes. Just be aware that good mechanics and being able to move in and out of those team fights is absolutely huge. I'm not saying take Rek'Sai, flank the ADC when they have ultimate and flash up and then you miss everything and you die. You have to pay attention to what you're playing and know when to use your abilities, and that's what he did absolutely perfectly in those World Championship finals. He was the go button, he was hitting crucial ultimates to set his team up, he was making those moves. Then when you thought, hey, G2's gonna win here, Tian shows up or Tian goes in and it's a surprise, and boom, his team wins the fight. He does that in this game too, and in his solo queue games. He knows when to hit the go button, he has perfect timing, perfect target selection, he gets himself that lead such that when those moments do happen, even if he dies under a tower like you see here, the damage is already done and his team can actually clean up very easily. It's an MVP performance in all his solo queue games. It's the amount of damage he gets off before he dies in those fights, and that's what's so crucial. If you're the Fed member, you go in and you make that mistake and you die that I referenced in the last video, you can't expect your team to bail you out if you are the one that's meant to deal that damage and you end up doing nothing. And basically this game was very easily closed by around 24 minutes or so. You'll see clips of his skirmishes and fights that ends up giving him 20 kills. But the point is he uses those principles we talked about in the early game and the early mid game to then dominate these skirmishes, dominate these team fights. The enemy jungler is absolutely nothing, and when their itemization is broken like the Gragas' Morellos instead of the utility of say Zhonya's in these situations, it just makes it that much more easy. He gets a GA, he has Sterix, you know rushing those items early if you get them ahead of the curve can basically make you very difficult to deal with in those fights. And don't forget tower pushing and barons after you do that, and then you should be able to close out. Taking the lead on everything, making those picks and avoiding mistakes are your tickets to victory. And now as we close the video, you will see clips from different games with an Olaf and a Rek'Sai and so on, using these principles of hyper ganking when lanes are pushed, of invading the enemy jungler when you have dominance to get 3-level leads over them in experience, such that you can control where they go on the map, so you can get those early dragons, which will be way more important in Season 10, as well as those heralds considering there will be 2 of them. So this kind of playstyle really will set you up well in Season 10, because when you can suppress the enemy jungle as much as possible, yes, the camp spawns will help them hang on a little bit longer, but the dragon control and herald control is something that are going to be completely overlooked at the beginning phases of the season, and those who use these counter jungling techniques to get 3-level leads on the enemy jungler will be the ones getting those wins as soon as possible. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you were able to enjoy watching some FPX Tian as we close out Season 9, learning from his aggression, learning from his measured pathing, having that heightened awareness to process information and act on it very quickly, making the enemy jungler think he's choosing what he's doing when you actually are playing him like a puppet. Thank you very much for watching. As always, please do like, share, and comment if you did enjoy. We always like to try get around 1,000 likes per video. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this and want more for Season 10. And as always, I will see you all in the next tutorial.